What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Awesome show ready for you guys today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us that 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on DraftKingsNetwork.com. DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku. Grab a friend, tell them, let them know what we're doing over here. Charlotte Wilder is going to stop by for a Wilder Tuesday, so know in advance when Charlotte shows up for the second hour. No, it is not Wednesday. No, you're not late for your appointments or anything like that. She's just showing up a day early because we had to shift some things around in the schedule because that's showbiz, baby. But speaking of showbiz, we had a lot to get to today. Monday Night Football doubleheader that delivered in ways I did not think were going to be possible going into last night. And so, Jesse, let's get right to it with this incredible soundbite from our buddy Will Levis.
Yeah, you're not going to want to miss this.
Why can't people just be nicer on Twitter?
All of this is anarchy. Eat Arby's, hang banners.
I would love it.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Jesse without the teeth in there so that it could be disturbing.
I know, that was very disturbing. It's disturbing for all of us. But happy birthday, senior.
Yes, happy birthday to the big guy. Dad, 61 today.
That did not sound like Will Levis at all, quite honestly. And I wish I looked like Will Levis. I mean, after one of the scores when he was, hitting that pose, I was like, oh, my God. For my 61st birthday, that's my birthday wish, that I could take my shirt off in public and people would be like, wow, nice body. But unfortunately, that's long gone. But thank you very, very much. 61 years old, yeah.
Yeah, so
unfortunately at 61, there are way too many of my friends on the internet that wish you would take your shirt off publicly. That's where we've arrived at life. So you're not doing too bad, thankfully.
Hey, there we go. We can make that happen for them. But we also have a very special graphic we want to show you that's on this day, December 12th, 1962. Here's what was going on back in the day. The top song was Big Girls Don't Cry.
Okay.
The top movie on this date was Mutiny on the Bounty.
Wow.
If you went to the grocery store to buy a gallon of milk, you would pay 35 cents. And some notable birthdays that you share, Frank Sinatra, who turned 47 on that day, and Bob Barker, who turned 39. And someone who turned 65 on this day today is my mom. So you actually share a birthday with my mom, too.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, that's very cool. Happy birthday to your mother. And also the family that we hang out with the Perianos all the time growing up. Their daughter, Claire, Mike's friend, Jake's friend, Sydney's friend, Claire, it's her birthday today as well. She's Jake's age. So happy birthday to you, Claire, as well. Happy birthday just to your mom. That is very, very cool.
Yeah.
But it's 61. It's not like you really celebrate them anymore. You know, they're happy they're here because they're here and you're here. But other than that, you know, you kind of just move along with your day. But it is, I appreciate it very much.
Well, we hope you do something to celebrate, Senior.
Oh, the one thing when I came home from the Dallas Philly game is my wife, Chris, made some cookies. So there is a bit of cookies in there. Some of my favorite ones, the ones that have the Hershey Kiss, you know, on top.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love those. I love those cookies. So I will enjoy a few of those on my birthday. I'll put a candle in them, and I will eat them. So, yes, Jesse, I will enjoy myself today. Thank you.
Okay, good. Glad to hear. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Did you
and
call
the rest
your mother
of the Golic
yet?
family will also use my father's birthday as an excuse to eat cake. So there's that part of it, too, for the rest of us. So thank you for that gift, Dad.
Wow, what a gift.
And somehow Sydney, your sister Sydney, my daughter Sydney, will work out, in fact, in a way that she feels she deserves a present today and to spend some of my money. That's kind of what she does on my birthday as well.
She'll maybe use your money to buy you a gift.
Well, she's been doing that already for decades.
He's got a whole laundry list of those gifts. So happy birthday to Jesse's mom. Happy birthday to Claire. Happy birthday, Dad. We love you. We're glad you're here, and we're gonna try and celebrate with a gift that we want to give to you, which is the platform to talk about what the hell went on in Monday Night Football with one of our foremost Italian-American quarterbacks and the most jacked quarterback in the NFL, both finding a way to win that I'd have to imagine is going to delight members of Gold's Gyms across this great nation this morning as they gather around the squat rack, around the leg press to talk about what these two guys did. That Tennessee Titans comeback, Dad, how improbable was it? Since 2016, teams down 14 with under 3 minutes left, which the Titans were down to the Dolphins at that juncture, were 0-767 heading into last night. Incredibly impressive performance from the rookie Will Levis, Dad, who has kind of ridden the roller coaster through this back half of his rookie season since he's taken over as the starter. This looked like when we saw him that first time out, cutting it loose down the field. Him and DeAndre Hopkins were unstoppable.
Yeah, they really were. 23 of 38, 327, most passing yards by a rookie on Monday Night Football ever. Touchdown, interception, as you meant, and one interception. But he was on fire, and this team was on fire after it's like they gave away the game to Miami, right? That's 13-all. 2 turnovers later, all of a sudden, it's 27-13 with like 4 some minutes to go. And the shots of Mike Vrabel on the sideline were way different than what he looked like when I was golfing with him in Tahoe when we had a beer in his hand and he was hitting drives 320 yards. He looked a lot different last night as he was anguishing over the turnovers and what was going wrong on the field there, and all of a sudden this high-scoring offense in Miami puts 2 or more on the board and has up 27-13 with 4 something to go. And then give Tennessee credit. It's 13.5-point dogs. This was the thing. They came down and they scored. They got the ball with 4 some minutes to go. They score that touchdown to get within a touchdown with 2:40 to go. And, I mean, at that point, Mike, and I know it's a full game and you go, but, you know, and there's a lot of plays in it, but you look at situations. Miami, it felt like it was a 5-second 3-and-out after that, right? I mean, they put it this way. Tennessee scored with 2:40 to go to be 1 score down, got the ball back, and was inside Miami's 10-yard line at the 2-minute warning. That's how quickly Miami's 3-and-out was and how quickly Tennessee moved back down the field. Tennessee scored with about $1:49 left. So Miami still had time to go downfield and try and kick a field goal to win. So horrible on the Miami offense, not being able to close out the game. Certainly on the defense, to not be able to stop that Tennessee offense. But congrats again to the bodybuilding Will Levis, who just hit a pose on the sideline. And did that, you know, they do that crab thing. And I'm like, wow, I do the crab and nothing happens. You know, he does it. I mean, veins are popping in his arms and his forearms and his neck. I'm like, wow, pretty impressive. But what a great win. I mean, what a great win for them. And we'll get to the Giants as well. I mean, man, that's why it's football. These are we talked about these as what if games, what games can cost you. Miami's still going to make the playoffs unless the bottom completely falls out. Green Bay is tinkering on the edge of that, sitting in the 7th slot right now. So this could be one of those games they look back on and say, Tommy DeVito got us, and possibly knocked us out of the playoffs. This is that classic what if game if things don't go your way in the rest of the regular season, because these are two games Miami and Green Bay should have won.
Well, and for Miami, we've talked about them relative to their battle for the 1 seed, jockeying with a team like the Baltimore Ravens that we just saw get a big win this weekend. And, Dad, it was a lot of what we worried about with the Dolphins going into this game, that we talked about not expecting Jeffrey Simmons out for the Tennessee Titans. Would their D-line be able to get it done? Per Next Gen Stats, Tua was pressured on 39% of his dropbacks last night and sacked 5 times. When facing pressure, Tua was 4 of 11 for 27 yards on the night. Without pressure, he was 19 of 22 for 213. And so it's the usual formula that we've seen when Miami has struggled this season. And again, injuries early last night on the offensive line, obviously the biggest injury of the night. And the moment that this became, Dad, what I'd call a Freaky Friday game, where it seemed like one morphed into the body of the other, was the Tyreek Hill ankle injury on the sideline on what was a missed horse collar call. His ankle injury completely changed the outcome of this game, because when you look at the box score, Dad, this Tennessee Titans team outgained them, outpassed them. They were more productive because so many of the points for Miami, like you said, came off of muffed punt, interception from Will Levis backed up in his own end zone to start the game, the botched exchange towards the end of the game that was the series immediately after, the muffed punt that gave Miami a short field. Besides that, their offense was not able to push it downfield. Instead, Will Levis up over 300 yards passing because he went bombs away again, and that connection with him and DeAndre Hopkins was what we're used to seeing with Tua and Tyreek Hill. Now, Tyreek was able to come into the beginning of the fourth quarter and kind of spark that run, but they were not able to have him on the field consistently enough because of that injury. And we saw, if you're looking to make an MVP case for Tyreek Hill, buddy, last night it showed up. Sometimes it's that you got to take them out of the context to see how valuable they are. And man, it's hard not to look at that and say Tyreek Hill continues to be the most important player on this team.
Without a doubt. I was stunned he came back. I mean, I love after he said he texted his wife in the locker room at halftime. Different world than when I played, that's for sure. Texting your wife at halftime. And he said his wife told him to get the hell back out on the field and play. and that he did, and made some catches. But you're right, it wasn't the normal Tyreek Hill night for sure. So, you do have questions about Miami, but they sit there and they have a 2-game lead on Buffalo. Remember, Buffalo beat them once already this year. And the rest of Miami's schedule, while they play the Jets next, but that Jets defense has been playing some ball. Then they play Dallas, Baltimore, and finished with Buffalo. Mm-hmm. So, you got a nice lead right now, but boy, you could kind of see that slip away. We saw the couple-game lead that the Eagles had, and within 2 weeks, that's gone. And while they're tied with Dallas technically in the division lead right now. So could get interesting there. Green Bay, on the other hand, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Minnesota, Chicago. Not murderer's row, but, these teams, we see them like we saw Tennessee last night and the Giants. These teams can step up, especially if they have nothing to play for. It's amazing how much more loose you play, which is kind of weird. Yep. How loose you play when you have nothing to play for. And everybody will say, well, why don't you play that way, when you have everything to play for? Great question. It's a great question. But it seems a little more tense at times in the bigger games. For me, anyway. Now, the great players probably do, but for players like me and Mike, you were probably this way as well. I didn't want to let down I didn't want to make a mistake. I didn't want to be that guy that let my team down. And quite honestly, it's a tough way to play. Instead of playing to make a play, sometimes in a tough situation, players are playing to not make a bad play. And that can be the difference in kind of letting it go. We saw Zach Wilson just caution to the wind, especially in that second half. They let him go. And he was told his teammates during the week, well, what the hell can go wrong? They bench me for the 4th time, so what? And it is amazing when you just kind of whip the ball around and let it go, how well it can go at times.
It's so true. And I don't know how to explain it as someone like, man, I got sat down my senior year and basically told you don't start playing better, we're going to play somebody else. So when you're going out there and every snap, you're thinking about this could be it. This could be the last play that I'm on the field. That does something to your brain. I think everybody's been in a situation where you care so much about what's going on. And like you said, you don't want to certainly ruin your own opportunities. You definitely don't want to let down the people around you that you know have worked very hard. And so sometimes you grip the wheel a little bit too tight. And that was not the case last night. Will Levis looked like a guy that was certainly playing free and has them in a good position where this is what we're used to with Mike Vrabel. He is NFL's MacGyver. He's cut from that Mike Tomlin mold of he's going to make the best of what's around every time and somehow find a chance to win these games he shouldn't. You've seen plenty of good stuff from Will Levis that if you're a Titans fan should get you excited about the future. There's still some stuff that's raw there, but man, he is tough. He put his body on the line on multiple occasions. He's mobile enough to make things happen, and that connection between him and right now your best receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, he wasn't afraid to hum that thing in here. And Dad, if we've learned one thing this year, if you're a quarterback and a coach on a losing team, one of the best things that you can do is just keep your best skill position players happy. They did it in Vegas, throwing the ball to Devontae Adams all the time, and in Tennessee they figured out, hey, if nothing else, get the ball to the future Hall of Famer and good things might happen. That's
exactly right. Exactly right. And think about that division in the big picture, that AFC South of the young quarterbacks. You have, it's been out of sight, out of mind. Anthony Richardson, right, for the Colts. He'll be the guy for the Colts. You got, obviously, Levis for Tennessee. And then C.J. Stroud having himself an incredible year, a lock for Offensive Rookie of the Year in there as well. And then, obviously, Trevor Lawrence. But 3 of the 4 rookie quarterbacks, with Richardson being out with the shoulder injury. But a lot of young, talented quarterbacks there to see how they grow with that division.
A lot of young, talented quarterbacks, and then there's our large Italian son, Tommy. Yeah. The scenes last night in New York were incredible. I like the game, Dad. Yes, like the Giants, like Saquon Barkley, incredible night. The Giants' ground game certainly carries the day. Tommy DeVito rushes for 71 yards of his own, throws an 8-yard touchdown pass to Isaiah Hodgins, finishes 17 of 21 for $158 and that score. But Dad, this is about everything surrounding this. Yes, they get a great win. Great for Brian Daboll and company. Great for the response of this team, like you said, playing with much less on their plate. But everybody ate last night between the visuals of Tommy DeVito's agent dressed like a person who says the Batman on the sideline, between Tommy DeVito's family. That, Jesse, do you have the quote that Tommy DeVito's dad gave to the New York Post about the setup that we saw in the parking lot of MetLife with this family? Think of like a Thanksgiving turkey drive, but for Christmas and for Italians. And that was the scene that we apparently had in the parking lots last night. I
don't have the exact quote in front of me, but what I can tell you is that he said to the Post, he said, we're going to give them exactly what they've been asking for. They said they were going to have 100 chicken cutlets. They said they were going to have hero sandwiches, baked ziti. He said they've been begging for it. We're going to give it to them. It was literally the most Italian thing you've ever heard in your life.
I mean, they're just playing right into this thing, right? They're and more power to them. We were having fun. When is Tommy going to invite the team over to his house, or he's staying and Mom, breaking all the food? But they're playing into it more than any of us are playing into it. And good for them, because listen, they are riding the wave right now, and you have no idea how long that wave is going to go. Tommy is playing well, but they backed it up, Mike, as you said. When you can have your quarterback only throw it 21 times and you run it 34 times for over 200 yards, things are going your way, and that's the best thing you can do for a young quarterback, especially a young quarterback who wasn't really expected to be out there. Is protect them that way, but he does go 17 of 21, as you mentioned. Not too crazy of throws. They were living on the ground game, and this is why we all said Saquon Barkley was so important. We meant it in a way for them to make the playoffs, but still, in a game like this, to be able to do what he did. But I love how the family's playing into it. So we, for those outside that would play into it, and those people that would say don't play into those stereotypes, they're doing it. They're doing it more than anybody's doing it, right? And they're enjoying it, and good for them. Good for them to enjoy this thing.
They are making the most of this. I saw Brian Daboll said, he's like, there's an extra bit of pressure when you've got 300 family members showing up to the game and you've got all this going on. Dad, you know this. We hear coaches talk about it all the time. The outside noise, ticket requests, people that I'm sure have been coming out of the woodwork for Tommy in the last few weeks here to try and get over to these games. And so to be at home and have his family kind of be able to take charge on this stuff, but then to go out there and to just see the way the teams embraced it. You've got shots in the post-game locker room of everybody giving the Italian hands, every touchdown celebration. It's a legitimate phenomenon right now, Dad. Not since like Linsanity in New York has, I think, one athlete come and so swept up so quickly the psyche of one town.
Do you want to be the one that goes against the family?
That's a great point. I don't want to be the one that goes against his agent. We'll have Charlotte Wilder with more reporting on Sean Stellano, his agent, coming up in a bit.
Back to GoJo and Golic. One seat is very hot in the NFL. Brandon Staley's Chargers racked up another loss on Sunday to Denver. Guys, are you frankly surprised that he's still the head coach today? So far? It's early.
In this day and age, yes. Like, based on what we usually see, Dad, which is a lot of knee-jerk decisions and shorter and shorter leashes for quarterbacks league-wide. We've already seen multiple firings this year. Yes, I am a bit surprised. I'm somewhat heartened by it. Like, I don't like seeing guys get thrown out the door very early on in the middle of the season. It doesn't really help the team a ton. It's a little bit different in college in certain ways, but I am a bit surprised, especially considering the loss this last weekend. Denver's turned it around. We need to, if we haven't already, flip the context around that team. That's an actual good football team that the Chargers lost to. Obviously, losing your starting quarterback in Justin Herbert, and who knows now what they're going to have as far as availability for him the rest of the season, changes the equation. They join a laundry list of teams that now has that to point to as the reason why things aren't going to be good, but they have been trending in a bad direction for a while now.
Well, they had, and that's the thing. It's the bigger picture here of the expectation for them to take that next step, and they just haven't done it. And whenever the head coach's side of the ball is the failing side, it gets magnified. He's a defensive coach. That defense has been struggling, and we almost weekly question why the offense isn't better. Again, Williams being out, but Keenan Allen right near the top of receiving yards. Herbert, Austin Eckler had some, obviously missed some games, but we know what he can be as well in offense. So it's just flat out been an underachieving team. So in the bigger picture here, because Mike, we're not one of those that are going to sit there and pound a table and say this guy's awful, he couldn't coach, in D3, whatever, and say he should be gone. It's ridiculous to do. He's an NFL coach, and he's having a hard time. Josh McDaniels did it twice, got fired twice. Brandon Staley is probably not going to survive this, and it's a shame, but it happens every single year. And then the fact is, as Jesse said, we're surprised it hasn't been done. You do it during the season for a couple of reasons. One, locker room, and you talk about maybe with the Raiders and Josh McDaniels, how it got so bad that they had to get it out. Frank Reich, you started to hear reports of assistant coaches, going directly to the owner about things that needed to be done. So maybe things weren't as hunky-dory on that side of it either as well. But Tepper, the owner with Carolina, has always had the quick trigger finger to fire. So that didn't surprise a lot of people. And then the other reason is to get a jump on hiring your next coach. Now, you're not supposed to talk to people that have jobs, but we all know how that works. But at least if you don't have a head coach, you are free to kind of start searching names in what direction that you want to go. So that would be the only reason I would have thought in the Chargers case that might happen during the season, so you start that. But, hope the guy hangs on to his job as long as he possibly can. But I have a feeling, and I think most do, that it's not going to last there.
Yeah, my worry is always also, too, for the assistants on the staff. Like, that affects so many other people outside of just the head coach, who they're usually going to have other opportunities. Brandon Staley, I'd imagine, is still, even if it's not as a head coach, going to get opportunities as a coordinator back in this league. We see that happen all the time, but there are people far on down that staff who are affected by this in much more adverse ways. But you're right. This is not, it feels like a not if, but when type of situation for that organization. They announced that Justin Herbert has a fractured index finger. And so given where they are in the season, Dad would be shocked if we saw him again, considering what the organization's invested in him. He's going to be there. And whoever they're trying to sell this next job to, he is going to be the thing they hold out and say, you're going to walk into the party with one of the 5 or 10 most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the most accomplished quarterbacks in terms of statistics for his age that we've ever had. Anytime you've got guys that are ticking off the Mahomes and Andrew Luck records, you're usually in pretty good company.
Well, and we've talked about this before, and it'll start to get talked about more as the season is coming to an end. And as we said, we never call for it, but it's usually 4 to 7 coaches a year. And then, so what does that next coach, if that next possible coach has a choice out there, what do you look for? And we talk about quarterbacks and ownership, right? And you have a owner with a quick pull finger out in Carolina and a young quarterback. In with the Raiders, do you even have your quarterback? Is Aiden O'Connell going to get the shot, next year, or are they moving on completely? It's the Chargers, if in fact Staley is going to be gone, where you have that ready-made quarterback and what seems a lot of talent that I think would be the kind of the light bulb going on for a coach that has his choice of where I want to choose to go. We'll see. There's still time. Brandon Staley is still the head coach there, still trying to finish out the season, but that's going to start to be talked about in these last few weeks. They're seeding in the playoffs, who are the best teams in the NFL. And then it's, okay, if this team doesn't have a coach anymore, who are the hot coaching candidates? Are there going to be retreads out there? Is there going to be a whole set of new coordinators who become head coaches for the first time? So that's the talk on both sides of the coin as you come to the end of the NFL season.
You mentioned Aiden O'Connell as one of the confusing parts of this, and the Raiders unsure of their quarterback situation. Jesse, they're not the only ones right now. This season, especially now with the Herbert injury added on top of this, we could get extended Easton Stick reps, seems to be one that's trending this way for almost everybody.
Yeah, so like in that 4 p.m. window on Sunday, we had a great quarterback matchup, right? We had Allen and Mahomes. But then, Bert Brewer pointed out, we also had Nick Mullins, Aiden O'Connell, Easton Stick, and Drew Lock. So I do hate to ask this, of a defensive lineman here, but do we need to figure out a way to protect the quarterback more? We're playing with all these. Come on, all these backup quarterbacks. Come on.
Will you stop it, please? Someone turn her mic off. This is what you do to me on my birthday? I mean, we just had Richard Sherman on, and he was saying that things from the times when he played to the times when I played to what's going on now, they can't do anymore to protect the quarterback. What rule could they make anymore that would protect the quarterback anymore? You can't tackle him at all. That's where we go next. You can't hit him low. You can't hit him, obviously, in the head. You can't land on him with your full weight. I mean, what can you do? And I've actually asked the other way on this. Mike, I've asked you this. It was a few weeks ago. We were at 50 starting quarterbacks, and obviously that number has gone up. Your mother and I were going through each team, and I can't do it as quick off the top of my head, on how many teams this year are on multiple quarterbacks. And my thought was, I reversed it and said, if the ratings aren't going down, quit protecting the quarterback so much, because that's why they have all these rules, to keep the superstars on the field, which is the quarterbacks, to keep the pretty boys out there so people want to tune in. So we have had a massacre of starting quarterbacks this year. And I said, if the ratings aren't down, then let's stop protecting them so much, because people are watching the games, not the quarterback, even though I know that's kind of not true.
I was going to say, it's an objectively worse product this year. This is like in 2017 when we had that Final Four that was largely backups and people wondered if we'd become a quarterback agnostic league. And that's never going to be how it works. The thing I have seen talked about is, do we have an offensive line problem? Are quarterbacks not being protected well enough? And I thought Nate Tice, who does a great job over at The Athletic and is a former quarterback himself, stated the case pretty well. And I'm paraphrasing, but it's this idea of like, hey, when you become a league that drops back to pass a lot more, when you've got quarterbacks frequently attempting 50 passes during the body of a game, pass protection's hard. Like if you give these freak show D linemen, and I think one of the things that has changed, Dad, is we've talked about this before, you found a home for all the tweeners. All the guys that would have been lost to the sands of time because they weren't big enough or whatever, now just become specialized pass rushers and put in situations where they get athletic mismatches and more cracks at the quarterback. We've talked about what a defensive year it's been, and when you give those guys enough opportunity, yes, there are things about offensive line development that have suffered, that have become stagnant, that absolutely could get referenced. But you've got a league that's got more weapons on defense to go along with that, and more opportunities for them to affect the game than ever before.
We're seeing more stunts on the D-line, more overloads, more guys standing up on the D-line to confuse the offensive line. Good luck to Al Michaels this Thursday. Aiden O'Connell versus Easton Stick on Thursday Night Football.
God continues to give his toughest battles to Al Michaels, his strongest soldier, every Thursday.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. So guys, we have learned more about Shohei Ohtani's historic deal. So over the next 10 years, by Shohei's choice, he's going to be paid $2 million annually by the Dodgers. He asked for and agreed to have 97% of his salary, $680 million of the $700 million in the 10-year contract, deferred without interest, payable over 10 years after this playing contract expires. Guys, unicorn of a player, unicorn of a deal, and obviously he's doing this so that they can build the pieces around him because he wants to win. That's why he's doing it.
Yeah, this is what happens when you've got the luxury of making the kind of money that he is making away from the diamond in his back pocket right now. Shohei Ohtani, even by doing this, so over the life of this deal with the Dodgers, he's going to get $2 million a year, every year. But off the field, he expects to earn about $50 million next season, up from about $40 million this season. He's going to have his own line of New Balance shoes. And so, Dad, it's the old Rob Gronkowski line where he always talked about he lived off his endorsement money and then he pocketed everything he made in the NFL. And for Shohei Ohtani, who I'd imagine coming from an Angels organization that didn't do a lot of winning, who made this decision largely because, as we saw in the World Baseball Classic, that man is starving for some actual championship run and postseason fun, decided, okay, I can truly have my cake and eat it too here, because, by the way, on the back end of all this, if he's not living in California, when this deal ends, he gets to avoid the California state income tax on all of this deferred money for him. So it's somehow a win-win, and the rich continue to get richer.
The biggest difference between like baseball and football, we always talk about Tom Brady would take less, so in the hard cap, the team would have more to spend, right? Shohei Ohtani isn't taking less, gang. He's getting every cent of his money, just in a different way. So another big difference of pay in baseball and football, especially when you have a hard cap. And without going too far into the weeds on why he's doing this, you know, it's all about that competitive balanced tax payroll that baseball has and what counts against it. This would have been $70 million, but because of the deferred money, it will be about $46 million. Of that, $44 million has to be put aside every year in escrow. It's kind of like Deshaun Watson's money with Cleveland. When you have guaranteed money in the NFL, whatever that guaranteed amount is for the life of the contract, not just for the year, but for the life. So when Deshaun Watson signs fully guaranteed $230 million, $230 million by the Haslams, the owner of the Browns, has to be set aside in escrow to have that money there. So any of that guaranteed. So that number went way down for what the Dodgers have to set aside and for the tax bill as well. He'll get all his money, the rest of the $680 million after this 10-year deal ends in 2033. So 2034 to 2043, he'll get $68 million a year, right, like you said, Mike, wherever he's going to live, however the tax affects that. But he's able to help his team without taking a pay cut like you have to do in the NFL to help your team. Sometimes restructuring and not taking a pay cut, you can help your team.
Sure.
But there are times, and we know Tom Brady has been the bell cow of this, Tom Brady takes less money to help his team, so teams try and get other quarterbacks to do it. Again, no less money taken here, just a different way to be paid.
Well, and Dad, a different way that's raising alarm. I saw Jared Carrabba's tweet yesterday, and a lot of people agreed, like, this doesn't feel like you should be allowed to do this with what it affords them. It's essentially a tax loophole that they're maximizing here, and in a way that's going to grossly affect the rest of this offseason. Like, it's going to give them the money to potentially spend on more free agents. And for a lot of people pointing at one of his countrymen in Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who is expected to be one of the prized free agent pitching acquisitions of this offseason. He's won 3 straight versions of Japan's Cy Young Award here. He's earned the Pacific League Most Valuable Player. And between him and Josh Hader, it now opens up the door for them to go and full super team this thing, much to the dismay of, I'd imagine, the rest of Major League Baseball, who is not operating with as deep of pockets.
And in the collective bargaining agreement, so while this was probably talked about in the CBA, hey, yeah, you can defer money and we can do just what I talked about. You pay less against the tax, blah, 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 blah. In that CBA, it didn't put a limit on the amount of money that can be deferred. So that's why you're seeing $680 million of the $700 deferred. Here's why I don't think this starts an avalanche, Mike. I don't think most players are going to do this. I don't think most players are going to give up a lot of, not give up, but transfer a lot of money. They want, and most money people will say, get your money now. It's kind of like the lottery when you win it. Take the buyout, take it, take the money, get it working for you. And even when you have a lot of money, still, you know how that is. You want more or you want it working for you. Shohei, I think, is going to be, Jesse has used the term unicorn. I think he's going to be a unicorn in this way, especially to this amount. You're going to probably see other players get paid a lot to defer some money. But to defer this much, I don't think this all of a sudden is going to become a thing to start deferring this much money.
Yeah, these are higher order problems that Shohei Ohtani is dealing with and that the Dodgers are going through with him. And you're right, because I saw a lot of people basically saying, well, get ready for a lockout in 2026 or whenever this collective bargaining agreement's going to be up, because this is going to be something that people are going to fight over. And you've brought this up for years as someone that was for a long time a part of a union, was a part of a union that struck. Is very rarely are decisions for a union easily made. Now, this could be different coming from the ownership side, and if it were something like a lockout, that's usually where it happens. Is, are other owners, are other people around baseball going to look at what's gone on here and willingly sign up for this again? Because I'm with you, from a player's side, you hardly ever let the events or the actions of one person. That's why in the NFL, when we talk about stuff like the franchise tag, it's always a difficult prospect to try and consider change, because it affects comparatively so few people. People always advocate for something like being able to let a college player go one and done out of college football and change the rules on that, even though it comparatively affects very few players. So why are you going to give up something at the negotiating table for that? I wonder if other owners around Major League Baseball and other people in power there are going to look at this situation and say, all right, well, now, especially if the Dodgers go and rip off a run here, which we still got to wait and see. You still got to actually play the games. But if they're able to do something like that in a situation where they've really gotten to play with some funny money here, I don't know how well that's going to sit with the other people making decisions for teams.
See, this is, and Mike, we've talked about this I've done it for a couple of decades, and you as long as you've been doing this as well. Baseball is one of the biggest haves and have-nots out there, right? Because as we mentioned yesterday, while there's no ceiling, there's the tax you have to deal with, there's no floor. As we said, Shohei Ohtani's, his average was $70 million a year. It was more than two entire teams' starting payroll at the beginning of the season. I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy. And every now and then, a have-not has a great year and wins a World Series, and everybody says, see, you can do it, right? Well, most of the time, you can't. It is the biggest disparity of those who have the money and those who don't. So then you get, this is one where owners will go at each other more, I think, than in other sports as well, because there is such a difference in the haves and the have-nots, and the have-nots wanting more and the haves wanting to keep what they have and even get more. So going to be interesting. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, wait a minute, NFL players restructure their deal to help their team. Yes, they do. And their base salary for that year is lower. That lowers the cap number, but they get all that made up money in a signing bonus check. They get a monster check written to them. You would love to restructure your deal in the NFL because your base salary goes down, but they hand you a monster check that makes up for a lot of the signing bonus that they can spread over the rest of the contract to keep your cap low. So you're getting a boatload of money right there up front.
Yeah, every sport's got loopholes that people try and exploit financially. Everyone's got clever accounting. This is the most egregious version of that we've ever seen, and it's going to allow the Dodgers to continue to go out and do the thing that's ticking off the rest of baseball right now, which is have the offseason where one of the biggest name brand franchises with some of the most money is able to go out and just throw all of that, shoot it out of the money cannon at players, and make things happen. What you just described, Dad, we talked about this chasing tail signs and all the things tracking flights the other day. Major League Baseball sounds a lot like college football in certain regards, between the disparity of the haves and have-nots.
back to GoJo and Golic. A lot going on in the NFL, and with the Golden Globe nominees being announced yesterday, what better time to hand out some awards? Okay, so we are going to do that. A favorite here, some superlatives. We love to do it. An old reunion favorite, actually. This is one that we're going to use. Who traveled the furthest in Week 14 is going to be our first superlative. Traveled the furthest to be here. That could be spiritually, emotionally, any way you want to take this. Fellas, let's go.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys first because I didn't even realize this, and our producer Drew did a great job putting this together with the Globes. I completely forgot the Golden Globes were like a thing coming up here. Do award shows matter to anybody anymore? Do we watch any of these things? Like every once in a while, I feel like I parachute on the Oscar. I saw the Grammys was trying to do a celebration of hip hop, which given their usual treatment of that musical genre and the main awards there, that's awful rich coming from them. But it feels like we've really lost award shows as one of the mainstays of society.
100%. I think people just don't care anymore. They don't want to see all the actors, like all these Richie Riches sitting in a room together being like, our craft is just it's so hard, our craft. And then they'll be like, and also world peace. And everyone's just like, okay, get out of here.
Yeah, our craft is so tough, and how can we save the world? And how are you topping any ratings of Will Smith popping Chris Rock?
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Slap heard around the world.
Yeah. So if you're not going to top that rating-wise, you move on. Mine for this one is, I love the question. To me, you have some nice stories, with Joe Flacco coming back, what Brandon Aubrey did. He was my first team all weekend, but those are all to the goods, right? Especially for Aubrey. Flacco, they lost the first start. He came out strong and then they had a little trouble, but he's been going well. To me, it's got to be Zach Wilson, right? Zach Wilson's been benched 3 times. That Zach Wilson, where's he's had to be emotionally from being the face of the Jets to being cast aside to sit and watch how Aaron Rodgers does it, to being the guy, to being not the guy, to being the guy, to being not the guy, and now being the guy again, being accused of saying, I don't want to play, for this team and get hurt at the end of the year when I'm going to be somewhere else. The emotional roller coaster this kid has been on has been amazing, and he came out and had a wonderful game last week, so kudos to him for that.
I guess the only thing with Zach is I would say how far he's come to get here. Like, I don't know where here is with Zach Wilson yet, because we've seen flashes of this, right? This isn't new for Zach Wilson. He got a win this weekend the same way he played well against the Kansas City Chiefs earlier in the season, and then we saw things shrivel back into a pumpkin again. It's not saying I wish it for the guy, but it's more saying I don't know how far we've actually come with Zach at this point. And that was the hope everyone had this offseason, right, Dad? Aaron Rodgers is in town, so now that stress we talked about is off of him. He's been able to learn from Aaron in camp. Like, going through one offseason program in training camp with the dude wasn't going to fix the things that were wrong with Zach Wilson's game. We've known he's got talent. I mean, hell, in this last game, he actually did one of the throws, Dad. You remember the Pro Day throw heard around the world where Zach Wilson, where he's rolling left and throwing back right. He did it in the game this time. He actually put that on wax in a way that still probably wasn't advisable in the game, but worked out pretty well because he's got a good receiver down on the other end there. So I do wonder with that one. I would probably say, but if we're going to go in that regard, and again, this to me may be a little bit more viable, at least in my mind, because I'll still go with Josh Dobbs. Like, kind of the similar career path or season path as Zach Wilson, in the fact that he did end up getting benched at the end of this last game. They flirted with it beforehand. But, man, Josh Dobbs and the roller coaster he's ridden this season, I still don't think we can lose sight of, given the fact that now he's become something of a regular starter and seems to be trending towards the decline.
The thing about it is with him is he has a nameplate on that roller coaster, right? I mean, he's ridden that roller coaster before. He runs that roller coaster, that's for sure.
Okay,
so
guys.
True, so true. All right, so we've got that one. What do we got next, Jesse?
Most likely to succeed, wild card edition. Ooh, getting spicy here. So, which team most likely to make the playoffs of ones that are sitting out right now? Who do we like?
Well, looking at the AFC, Dad, let's start with there, as we've got here the Bills, Bengals, Texans, and Broncos here. Obviously, for the Texans, they would have been the darling a week ago, but all of the injury, including to their starting quarterback and rookie C.J. Stroud, certainly clouds some of that. Tank Dell you lost. Nico Collins down with injury this week. Yeah. So things look a little shaky there. Bills, listen, we don't even have to talk necessarily about the wild card for Buffalo. The division is not out of the realm of possibility, as we talked about off the top, given what's gone on with the Miami Dolphins. So Buffalo seems like the Michael Myers, like you didn't kill him enough, and so now you hear the piano music in the background and they're hunting you down. That's a scary team. This Broncos team is a scary team right now. But based on the way they're playing and based on the way their quarterback is, especially, Dad, I'm not counting out Buffalo. That's a scary football team right now.
Buffalo, they have the Cowboys this week. Then they have the Chargers, the Patriots, and they finish up with the Dolphins, though we're again head scratching on the Dolphins anyway. So I think that's a good one. You go there. You know what? I'll go Denver because I agree. I think the Texans are starting to hit that injury bug. Your top two receivers now. I mean, while C.J. Stroud has been fantastic, having those receivers has certainly helped him. So I think that's going to be difficult for them. I definitely think Pittsburgh is going to fall out of the playoff picture. So I'm going to go with Denver, who plays Detroit this week, then New England, the Chargers, and Las Vegas. That's where they finish up. And they're playing ball. Everybody talk about Russell Wilson in the offense. It's been the defense that has been just incredible. And playing a Detroit team, I'm really looking forward to being at this game to seeing how Detroit responds from what went on this past weekend and what everybody thought of them and where they are. But you go Bills, I'll go Broncos. And I do think one of those teams for sure is getting in without question.
If the Broncos make the playoffs, there's got to be a strong consideration for Sean Payton to get coach of the year, right?
Yes.
Like, I know we've talked about a bunch of different candidates on this show. Mina Kimes brought up Shane Steichen in Indianapolis and the job that he's done with a backup quarterback. There's certainly going to be DeMeco Ryans, since we know where the Texans have come from to now. But if Denver's able to complete the mission here, Dad, after what an abject disaster last year was, I don't see how Sean Payton's not at least on the medal stand with the job that he's done and an identity that is not the one we're normally thinking about when we think of Sean Payton and how he's produced in the past. So I totally agree with you there. Jesse, let's get one more in here. Look, can we go to biggest blunder for the weekend?
Please, let's go to biggest blunder. A nominee here would definitely be Tony Romo for calling Taylor Swift Travis Kelce's wife.
I wish you could have seen my face. Dad, biggest blunder of the weekend, most people are going to think of the Kadarius Toney offsides call on what could have been a play that, as Patrick Mahomes said, helped define Travis Kelce's Hall of Fame legacy, which is already secure, but a play that would have lived in the annals of time. They probably would have been sending his shoes or something to the Hall of Fame after that one. But Tony Romo, with the slip of the tongue in the booth, saying Travis Kelce's wife when referencing Taylor Swift being shown there. Tree Payne, her publicist, who I found out is a real person and not just a TikTok phenomenon, had to be going into overdrive at that point. I wasn't sure if Tony knew something or if he just slipped up here, but either way, Dad, that's not a mistake you make with her. No.
Was it a mistake? Or was it a, kind of...
Oh, please. How does Tony Romo... You think Tony Romo was there?
Jesse, This is what analysts do. We gather information during the week. We talk to players. We talk to coaches. We talk to surrounding people. In this case, would you try and talk to Taylor Swift if she's going to be on? It's part of the storyline, right? It's all part of the storyline. So maybe I'm just making that up. He just had a slip of the tongue. Yeah,
You think Taylor Swift's talking to anybody? No.
Yeah.
Tony Romo's powers of prediction have long since, I think, gone away from where he originally started there. Season 1 Tony Romo, we'd have been like, man, he's dialed in. He might know something here. This point, Tony Romo does my favorite thing in the world, which is just continually in situations where the analyst normally has to predict, just ask Jim Nantz, what do you think here, Jim? And so I'd imagine Tony in this spot go, I don't know, Jim. Do you think they're going to work out long term? Do you think we're hearing wedding bells in the near future, Jim? I don't know.
Oh, my gosh. Answer a question with a question.
Boy. Coming up next, speaking of special, let's get to our friend Charlotte Wilder on some great reporting of Tommy DeVito next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic, and we're about to get wild on a Tuesday. So I would like to just reconfirm with everyone, it is Tuesday. Like GoJo said at the top of the show, Charlotte is joining us today, not tomorrow, so don't be confused. You're not late for your appointments. You're not missing anything. Without further ado, though, we do have Charlotte Wilder with us now. Charlotte, thank you for being here on a Tuesday. And I'm not sure.
There we go. Sounder in effect right now. We're actually waiting to get Charlotte's sound still in here. Technical difficulties on the fly. This is show business, baby. But you guys can check out Charlotte Wilder Monday through Friday, 4 days a week, every day except Monday, co-hosting Oddball with Amin El Hassan there, doing a great job. We got plenty of stuff on the NBA front I want to get to with Charlotte, Dad, including a lot of conversation and always kind of a difficult one to have surrounding Zion Williamson coming off. I saw Stephen A. Smith had some very pointed comments about Zion's weight coming off of the NBA's in-season tournament and some of the reaction to the way that he's looked there recently. And, Dad, this is something that's come up a lot and is always kind of difficult in sports because obviously in sports, two things can be true, right? One, your body is a commodity in sports. Like, your body matters to the team. We see the way that it's scouted all the time, the way that, you know, length, wingspan in the NFL, height, weight, all the measurables that are a part of a team's desire to acquire you as someone that's going to help them win. But then on the other side, there is also that human element. And I always go back to the coverage of Eddie Lacy, the former Alabama running back turned Green Bay Packers running back, who was on the heavier side and was the subject of a lot of jokes and scrutiny during his time in the NFL, and admitted after that conversation about his weight affected him and affected the way that he viewed himself, affected the way that he performed. And I always felt kind of bad about that on the back end, remembering being someone who at times would comment on that, and Dad, forgetting that we don't know everything from the outside. We don't know everything about these guys' specific situations, and so sometimes those conversations can border on inappropriate.
Well, they can, but I'll say this. I mean, when you're in pro sports, your body is literally your temple. You're judged on your performance, and you can be judged on your body as well. That's, to me, it's part and parcel. It's kind of the way it goes there. And with Zion, put up 36 last night in a win. The bottom line is, does he? Now I know Shaq got on him as well. Does he think he has a problem? And if he hasn't done anything by now, are we expecting him to? He's averaging about 23 points a game. Him and Brandon Ingram, I believe, are averaging about the same amount as I mentioned. 36 last night. The biggest question to me, Charlotte, I don't know if you've been listening to the conversation, is what does Zion think of himself and think of how he is from a conditioning standpoint? He hears everybody barking at him, but I wonder what his thought process is.
Hi, guys. First of all, thank you. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Just kidding. Long-time both. I've been thinking about this because my knee-jerk reaction is that I feel bad talking about somebody's body. And at the same time, what you said, Senior, it is part of his job to be in shape. And if it's clear that he can't play as well if he's not in shape, then, it's a little weird for me. But I think what it comes down to is what you're talking about is, does he want to do anything about this? And I think the thing that's been a little bit troubling, or a little bit like, oh, I don't actually know how much this guy wants to do this, is that, people inside in the Pelicans organization have said to the Times-Picayune, like, we can't get through to him, basically. Like, he's not interested in dieting, or, I don't like that word. He's not interested in eating foods and running a lot, I guess, like whatever you have to do to condition. And that's where it starts to be like, okay, you do have a job to do here, buddy. And to me, what's a real bummer about it is that when he's good, when he's on, when everything's working, he's electric. So it's just like, what a waste.
And I think that's kind of where I fall, Charlotte. And this is always my thought, whether it was a guy's conditioning or whether it was a guy treated himself in other ways, right? Like I had teammates that wanted to go out and drink during the week. I couldn't do that because I knew I was already working as hard as I could and needed to just to be viable anywhere near game day. But there were guys I knew that could go out there, drink during the week, drink closer to game day, and still go out and play well. And that's just one example. But my thought process as a teammate was always, as long as you can show up and handle your business, I don't need to worry about if it becomes dangerous, if it becomes illegal, then we'll have a conversation. And obviously being a good teammate is pulling somebody back away from that. But in general, it's if you're getting yourself ready to play and you're not endangering yourself or others, I'm not going to worry too much about your habits away from the field because that's your personal business. Here with Zion, it's kind of bordering on that. Like JJ Redick, his former teammate, said this the other day. He's still not in shape despite everything he's gone through, despite numerous conversations with legends of the game about being in shape. He has not bought into his own career yet. And that's the thing, Dad, where sometimes, and I think about this now as a 34-year-old who is having to work on, transforming my body after being big for my whole life. And the way that you approach it is there are so many things that I wish that I not even knew now, but took more seriously when I was a young person, when I didn't necessarily have to, that I would have been better for with my athletic career and just with my general health and wellness, that sometimes you don't realize, especially when you've got all the ability of someone like Zion, who's been able to go through life winning off that and that alone.
See, that's the thing, Mike. You and I, to get where we got, I mean, we had to claw, scratch, and it's one thing just to get where you're going, but then to be one of the best. And I mean, that's what he was in college, right? I mean, we've been talking about this kid forever, and he's always been great, and he's always looked like that, and he's been great. So much so, he's the top pick of the draft, and a lot of it is expected of him. But as you find out, as you go up, from high school to college to pro, it's different, and sometimes you have to change. But he's been successful this way. So I'm sure they're part of it. In his mind, he's like, I've done it this way. It's led me to a pretty good place. So why change? It doesn't mean he can't or see the light at some point, but a lot of it is about, even when you're considered one of the better ones, what do you do more to either stay there or get yourself going further? But it does kind of have to come from you, how you play. Listen, I played for 3 teams. I say that for this reason, is I played with a guy, and because I played for 3 teams, I'm not mentioning the team or the guy. But this guy, like you said, you had players go out during the week. This guy would go out during the week. This guy would go out and normally break curfew to have a few drinks, like on the road before games. And he played on Sundays, and he was one of our better players. And so basically, in all honesty, the coach said, cool, go do your thing. Just don't take any players with you. If you can still perform, sometimes that's all they care about. You still perform. So is he still performing? We see him averaging 23 points a game, Charlotte. We see him throw down 36 last night. We see him play, I think they've played 24 games. He's played 20 of those games. Maybe in his mind, he doesn't think he needs to be doing what they're doing, and he's still living off of what he's been able to do, looking like this.
Yeah, I do think, though, that it becomes a bigger, it's an individual issue, but it does on some level become a team issue no matter what you do. In a sport that's a team sport, whether you can go out there and perform your best, no matter what shape you're in, no matter how you're conducting yourself, fine. But that is going to affect the way other people on that team then see an imbalance going on. It's like, well, why, and I also just think talent can only get you so far. Talent is a wonderful thing to have. Talent is very helpful. But it's maybe like 20% or 30% of sustaining an actual career in anything. You really you have to show up, you have to work hard, you have to choose and pick your places of where you're going to make those sacrifices, because anything worth doing, not to sound like an inspirational poster, but like there are going to be things that you have to do your job or your passion well that probably aren't going to be that fun. And I think at a certain point it becomes like, can you make those choices and can you figure out what works for you and what is sustainable that also works for the people around you? And that, to me, there's a press conference about a month ago or a month and a half ago where Zion said, like, I'm trying to be bought in or something along those lines. And like, that's not a great thing to hear in a team sport from your superstar. So it touches a lot of things here that I think Zion as a teammate is also going to have to start reckoning with at some point.
And that's one of those things, because we've heard going back, and I think JJ Redick's mentioned this, that sometimes he can be, I won't ascribe this to JJ, but I feel like we've heard it anecdotally that he's a guy that's sometimes been a little bit aloof from the rest of the team, hasn't necessarily been in those ways. And even that only matters to me so much, Charlotte, because being a teammate to me, especially at that level, it's not your responsibility, no matter how good you are, to necessarily be the leader to get everyone bought in, but your work habits and everything else are the thing that you use to show the others in your profession, hey, this matters to me. Our success matters to me. My habits and what it means to be a pro versus just being a professional athlete. All those things seem to be what shows up in this situation. Now, to the original point about how talking about someone's weight can verge on disrespectful. Like Stephen A. Smith the other day brought up the idea, I think one of the things he said was, Zion looks like he would, he could reportedly eat the table or something like that. He was talking about the way that New Orleans restaurant owners view him and stuff like that. Like, when we get to points like that, that to me is where it starts to get a little bit murky, because it's still someone's body. And while we don't necessarily always associate it that way in sports, there can still be places where I think it crosses the line. But in general, part of your physical appearance is seen as your professional approach when it comes to sports. We're in the business of our bodies, and that's the reality of it.
It's exactly right. Yeah, it's exactly right. And you need to, so people want to see that look from you as well. And, as far as how far people go, that's what we're in the era, and say some hot take and, say something that crosses the line. And, that's where we are, unfortunately. It's a shame, but you don't need to go overboard on it. And as far as work ethic, I mean, who's been that standard? You go to the other side. It's been Kobe Bryant, right? I mean, everybody talks about Kobe Bryant's work ethic, even though he was one of the greatest, and how hard he worked. And if you didn't work hard in practice like him, he basically wasn't going to throw you the ball. He wasn't going to get you involved. I mean, so a lot of people see that and talk about, Mamba mentality, and they're like, well, why doesn't this guy, shouldn't everybody be working like that?
It's also LeBron. We just saw LeBron take over and win an in-season tournament at the age of 39 because he has like a cryo chamber probably next to his bed that he can roll over and fall into if he's not feeling his best. And I do want to clarify something that I said. I only meant Zion in terms of being a teammate in the way that environment affects other people. I don't mean that it's his responsibility to, be a role model or carry the team like that. These guys are paid to do this as a job. But what I do think is that even at that level, for professional teams, you see that the best teams and the ones that are successful are the ones where the environment is conducive to playing well. And I think that even someone saying like, I'm not bought in publicly, those are the kinds of things that can just chip away at morale or that environment, it's such an interesting balance to me, right? Because here are these professionals who are the most unbelievable athletes in the world, and environment still matters. Like, it's still a team sport. It's not college where it's like, you buy in and everybody believes the same myth about your team. It's not high school where like the future is what's most exciting. Like, this is it, you made it. And yet there is still such a huge part of that. We make fun of, or I make fun of heat culture because I work with a bunch of people in Miami, but there is something there that works. They went to the finals with, I don't know if you guys heard last year, a bunch of undrafted free agents. So there is something to be said for people buying into something. And I think you can see what happens when they don't.
Charlotte, I think that's a great point, is the idea of culture. This thing that we always hear about, this amorphous blob in sport, is basically just the sum total of your work habits. It's what's allowed, what's permitted, and what's expected inside of a building. And yes, when you've got one of your stars who does not appear to be bought in that way, while it's not his job to lead, it does send a message to everybody else like, all right, well, we're only going to go so far and do so much if that's the attitude that prevails around here. And I guess it brings it back to the point of why so much of this is a focus on Zion is because there's so much talent here. And because we all do believe he's got all of this potential, and you just hope that the professional maturity catches up in time. Because, Dad, this is something I'm sure you saw a lot, and we see a lot in sports in general, is we forget at times we are handing the winning lottery ticket to 21 and 22-year-old young people in these situations. And yet we expect them to immediately go out and do these things. And we've got unrealistic expectations because of how people like LeBron James or Patrick Mahomes handle these kind of moments with unbelievable grace, with incredible work ethic, with all of these traits that are so admirable, but also are not common. There's a reason there are so few players that end up like that. But when you see the talent Zion has, you want him in the hope for everyone. And that's why you hear JJ Redick and Shaq and these guys who also look and see this saying, yeah, he needs to figure this out, because every player has that moment where they realize I can't get by the way that I used to, and you just hope it comes before you waste too much time and waste too much of what could be an incredibly productive career.
And guys, isn't part of it, and why it's so frustrating, is when you see somebody who has all of the resources available to them. Like, I tell myself all the time, if I had a personal chef and a personal trainer and I could do all of these things. So I think part of it is people see these resources and feel that it's being wasted.
And I will say to that end, too, that's absolutely it. But we also do this comparative thing from the outside. And this is where I've got a level set. And remember, it's still a job for them. He's got all those resources. Right. He's absolutely got things to make it easier. But overall, it's still a job. And it's not just a vacation from the norm. And as someone who had to eat for a specific purpose for a while, that can also be a daunting task where food feels like a job for you now in a way that over time can be really taxing. And for this, for me, it was gaining weight. For him, it's losing weight, Charlotte. And so that still is a daunting thing, that while it's not an excuse for letting this linger, especially to the detriment of your career and to your personal life, but I still do think that there's that part we've got to factor in when we look at this from the outside comparing like that.
Yeah, I mean, anything we're talking about here is unbelievably difficult. I watch basketball games and I'm like, how do they do that? Not even how do you, how are you a beautiful three-point shooter? How do you run back and forth that many times? I'm 34, Dame's 33. And I was looking at him during the in-season tournament when they were playing the Pacers, and these young guys are running circles around him. And I was like, yeah, Dame, he had the look of a 30-something who's a little disillusioned, who's starting to realize that this is all really hard, but he still wants to do it. And he's one of the greatest players ever. So, I think that the entire concept of professional sports is glorified in a way that the realities of it are often not fully understood. And at the same time, that's what the money is for. In Mad Men, when when Peggy says, I would just like a little appreciation, and he says, that's what the money is for. It's well, okay, you did make a deal here. There's a transaction, and you have a lot of money to do the thing that you're doing. So I'm not saying the players are paid so much they need to stop complaining and just put on their boots and go to work. It's there is a, we're not asking them to do this for nothing. So I think that also factors in.
And the one thing I'll say is I would never expect the public to say that about the players. Oh, we know your job is hard. We get it. They're going to say you get paid tens of millions of dollars to go play a game. And you know what? I'm not going to sit here and try and change their mind. That's going to be their thought process, and that's fine. They'll say, my God, if I would do it for nothing if I could do it. First off, no, you wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't. But it's just a different world that it's tough to sit here and ever say, man, this is hard, or woe is me, because unless you're saying in a group of people who are all in the same boat. You try and say that publicly, and you're just going to get looked at like, are you kidding me? You play a game and make millions and millions of dollars, and that's true. But yes, it is extremely hard to get there and stay there, but it's not something you ever pull a woe was me. And I'm not saying Zion is doing that at all.
No, but Dad, to your original point is what it also took to get there has been one thing for Zion, and it seems what it's going to take to stay there and take the next step is going to be a completely other thing that he's still in the process of figuring out right now.
Back to GoJo and Golic. Now with Charlotte here, let's go back for a moment to Monday Night Football, and let's hear from Tommy DeVito on his game-winning drive.
Just go win the football game. Go execute a drive that we practice every day before practice, which is a 2-minute drive. We do it every day, different situations. Over all the practices, we've had that exact situation or something very similar to it. So just go out, execute the offense, and go win a game.
I mean, Tommy DeVito has just been so spectacular. And earlier in the show, Charlotte, we were talking about him and we were talking about his agent. And actually, GoJo, I have the quote now from his dad about the tailgate that they put on. He said, "We're giving the whole Italian show. It's going to be craziness. We're going to give them the Italian theater they've been asking for. 300 chicken cutlets, got Italian sandwiches, baked ziti, sausage, peppers, rice balls, everything Italian. I'm going to have my guys setting up sandwiches with Italian headbands on. We got an Italian flag with Tommy's picture on it. They've been begging for it. We're going to give it to them." Wow. I mean, what's there to say after that?
It's been overwhelming in the best ways possible. And Charlotte, you and I were texting last night during the game, and I was trying to figure out before the comparison, and the only thing I could come up with, and it's not been the same top-end production necessarily, but this feels like Linsanity, where something has swept over the biggest media market in America in a very short amount of time. This one just happens to involve an entire family full of the most Italian people on earth apparently leaning into the bit.
Well, I think the thing that happens when someone like this takes everybody by storm and surprises us and sweeps us off our feet, if you will, is that it's usually somebody that we on some level relate to or is not supposed to be there. Like Tommy DeVito went to Don Bosco in Bergen County. I'm pretty sure that's all right. I'm married to somebody who is Italian from New Jersey. So this is this is so real. Like when his dad talks about that spread, it's like, yes, we have to go pick up that spread for, any family function, the antipasto from Cosmos in Bergen County, New Jersey. Like it's so real and so unpolished in a way that we are not used to seeing in sports. And Tommy DeVito could not be in a more perfect market. Like this is where he's from. This is his childhood dream coming true. Like I want to write a movie about Tommy DeVito, and then the last scene is that he's handed the keys to his own car dealership. Tommy DeVito Ford. Like it's a fever dream, really. And so then you've got this agent, and his name is Sean Stellato. I'm not sure. He's from Salem, Mass. If you listen to him talk, he actually has a Boston accent. He was honored recently by the, an Italian-American association in Boston. I stalked his Instagram. He's got like 2,000 followers. His website looks like it was made maybe in 2007. And to see people like this who nobody expected to be there, and who knows how long they'll be there. This could be the start of the most incredible beginning to a narrative of professional football success, but it could also be like a beautiful blip. And so I think we all just really need to hang on and enjoy the ride for as long as we can, because I don't know how long we're going to have this fedora wearing agent. I just really love it. I really love it, guys. I can't stop talking about it.
I mean, it's a great story. But at the end there, what you said, and we talked about this earlier, you're 1,000% correct. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't know. We know that top draft picks that don't work out keep getting chances, i.e. Zach Wilson, Mitch Trubisky, the guys like, Trey Lance. They're going to have a team to go to. Guys like Tommy DeVito, who, again, spent his career at Syracuse and 1 year at Illinois, undrafted, got waived, undrafted by the Giants, got waived, signed to the practice squad, and the rest that they say is history. But we don't know where that goes. We don't, with Gardner Minshew, it's worked out, right? So he keeps going. But I'm not sure. He makes $700. He makes the minimum this year, $750. Next year he makes $900 some thousand. I mean, he'll never be, now any kind of cap worry. That's not a worry. It's, can he be a player? Can he put himself in position to go into the Giants next year and be the solid number two? He's there, right? Yes, that's the perfect level set though, because you're right. And Charlotte, what this all goes back to is this is fun because there are no stakes. Like the Giants aren't going anywhere this season. Nothing's going to happen. This isn't what we dealt with last year with
Michael,
the 49ers and Brock Purdy.
You gotta believe. You gotta believe.
I mean, you know what the funny thing is this has been a ton of fun. And the Giants have rattled off now, 3 in a row? Their season was on the brink. You look at Bill Barnwell a while back compared the two New York teams right now. The Jets had been this disaster. Aaron Rodgers is going and chastising the organization for leaks coming out about Zach Wilson, and there's this idea that Zach Wilson didn't want to come back. And on the other side, you got Italian food reviewing Tommy DeVito and his agent walking out into the field, taking the world by storm. They have responded in very different ways. The Giants aren't going over and quite honestly have played themselves out of a top draft pick now. I think currently they sit at 8th in the projected draft order if the season ended today, like that's not going to get you one of the two new quarterbacks. So they're still going to have some existential questions next year about Daniel Jones and his future and what he can be for this team. But that's all kind of suspended right now because this is harmless fun with no real stakes to it.
Well, it also feels very Giants, like it feels very Giants. It's like, we're going to give you something really fun and then we might regret it next year. I do think, though, that something about Tommy DeVito and his family that's maybe deeper than just being sort of funny and stereotypically what you think of when you think of, an Italian family from New Jersey is that it's a family. And I know that sounds so stupid because I just said it's more than that. But there's a level of care and comfort and vulnerability, I think, they're all showing by even him saying, like, I still live at home with my parents, and there's no shame around that. And they're all proud of how close they are. And I think we live in a time where you're supposed to leave home and flap your wings and, maybe move to a different city and try to strike out on your own. But hasn't been the norm for most of human civilization. And to see Tommy and his family show up with, like, not only does he eat chicken cutlets at home, but like, we're going to bring them to it. We're going to bring 300 of them to a tailgate. There's something that is very warm. And I think it just feels nice to see that as we were talking about Zion and these professional leagues and how it's a job. It's also really fun to see, like, the parents who brought orange slices to your youth soccer game are now bringing chicken cutlets to your NFL game. And it's just cute. It's really sweet.
Plus, when you think about it, I'm sure he's not the only 25-year-old living at home. I mean, it's tough out for the young crew now, right?
Not.
And everybody's saying, well, he plays in the NFL. Listen, he's making $750,000. He certainly isn't buying a nice house, for that with the interest rates the way they are. He would have to go rent somewhere, and I'm sure he's like most 25-year-olds, maybe who are, have a job but not enough money to go on their own. Why not save money? I'll live with mom and dad. So he's like one of us. That's what the public can say. He's just like us. He's young and he lives at home even though he has a job.
Well, I mean, consider the way this guy started the season. He wasn't supposed to be playing.
No.
He's trying to figure out if each and every week he's going to have a job playing professional football or not, let alone starting and trying to lead a team. And so, it is... Charlotte, to your point about the family, it is a good reminder that for so many NFL players, this is kind of the support system they got. Usually with quarterback, we're used to very carefully manicured, presenting as the CEO of the organization, this business, everything is very above board and buttoned up. And this feels a lot more familiar given the nature of that position, Dad, than we normally are allowed to get.
I will say this. I'm willing to bet a lot on this. He will have his own place next year.
I don't know. I actually disagree.
Well,
I think
he's becoming Charlotte. He's becoming very popular. If you know what I'm saying. So, he
they might have a guest house basement situation. We don't know.
It could be. You know how some of those basements have their own entrance? It could be one of those.
I tell you what, there was another New York Giants quarterback who once very famously transitioned to a reality dating star. Jesse Palmer can be the archetype if we have a single Tommy DeVito. That's all I'm saying. I cannot believe it has taken me this long to bring this up on the show today. I need everybody's opinions on this because I think two things can be true at once. One, I understand why the Lakers are going to hang an in-season tournament championship banner in the Staples Center, or whatever it's called now. It's the Staples Center. Get over it. I understand why they're going to do this. It went incredibly well. We are all big fans of the in-season tournament. The Lakers get the prize. We've seen LeBron James and company turn it on in a big way that is great for the NBA, that is great for the long-term trajectory of this tournament. But also, the fact that the Lakers, the Los Angeles Lakers, are going to hang this banner in Staples Center next to all the championship banners that this organization wants means that the minute they slip up, if they do, in the actual NBA playoffs this year, Charlotte, the internet is going to come for them in a way that is going to be biblical.
So, yes. Well, I mean, the internet comes for everybody. It's a matter of time. If it hasn't come for you yet, it will. It's come for me, and I survived it, and here we stand. But I think that there's actually, to me, it's sort of a great move because of that. Because they're basically saying, like, we know that you're going to roast us if we lay an egg in the playoffs, but we are going to hang this anyway. And I think that, to me, is like, we're betting on ourselves. I also think that the in-season tournament, something that I really respect about LeBron is how much he wants other people to love basketball and how much he is all in for the league trying to make December and November basketball matter, which it did. And he said after the win in the NBA, and he was holding the NBA Cup and the MVP trophy because obviously, he was like, there are guys on our team who haven't had that playoff experience, and also I wanted this to matter to people. And so if he wants everybody to buy in, and if the league wants everybody to buy in, and if the Lakers want everybody to buy in, hanging that banner is actually, sure, they'll get made fun of down the line if they don't make it far in the playoffs. But it's also saying, like, this thing in and of itself matters. And I also think the fact they also said, like, if we win it again, it'll just be that same banner. Like, they'll just put the years on the same banner. Right. It's not like they're going to it's not like every year there'll be a new in-season tournament banner. So I sort of admire it. I also think today doing anything that kind of risks you getting roasted is #brave. So brave. I'm all for it.
Listen, they have to. Plus, they want to push their product, right? I mean, this was an in-season tournament that in the beginning I was like, what the hell are we doing? The players didn't even know when the games were going on unless they walked out and saw a funky court, and then to the end where they were buying into it more and more, I bought into it more and more. So part of the whole thing had to be, guys, let's sell this product. We don't have to sell the basketball product, but let's sell this tournament so we have more meaning. I'm wondering if part of the deal, though, Charlotte, was you had to hang the banner. You have to hang the banner.
Ooh.
They said it's part of the deal. Do you really want to hang the banner? Do you want to hang a banner up for an NBA championship? Do you want to put it off to the side somewhere?
Now we're getting into conspiracies. That would be funny. I also feel though, like, don't teams always want any excuse to hang any banner? I mean, Harry Styles and Billy Joel have banners in Madison Square Garden. They also haven't had a reason to hang a banner in a long time, the Knicks. But I think everybody sort of.
Why not?
And I guess that's the backdrop to me that's funny about this is the Knicks have been a franchise completely devoid of success for so long that you're right. Any chance they get, any crumb they're going to take. This is the Lakers. It feels very different for that reason where it's like, all right, this is one of the premier franchises of the league. It's one of the defining franchises. The rivalry between them and the Celtics and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird basically saved saved the league. And now you've got to the point where they're hanging this, especially given the way that people now view like their bubble championship and all that. It invites a lot. I am broken, like you said, by the internet and the Colts AFC finalist banner that routinely gets memed into oblivion. But I do think Dad is probably right that it might not be of an outright directive, but at the same time, it does continue to be one of those things that puts credence on the entire model of this thing that definitely worked. So congratulations to the Lakers and their fun banner. One other random NBA question I had for you, Charlotte, and I don't know how much you and Amin have talked about this. Again, Oddball, fantastic podcast that you can get every day, but Monday. Where are we at in the Victor Wembanyama experience right now?
Yeah.
The Spurs just lost their 17th straight game. And while it hasn't been all Victor playing bad in this, he had 15 points, 18 rebounds, and 5 blocks in this game. He went 1 of 6 from beyond the arc. But this phenomenon that so many of us were excited about coming into the season, that for the early stretch of the season, really before the in-season tournament took over, and the in-season tournament was sort of looked at as, well, we've got an opportunity to potentially showcase a guy like Victor Wembanyama. What a boom it would be for the league if he ended up becoming the star of this, and instead Tyrese Halliburton showed up on our door, and now we've got this awesome new star for the Indiana Pacers that we get to mess around with. So I won't claim that I've sat around here and watched every Spurs game at this point, because I haven't. And Charlotte, I do wonder if that's not necessarily a problem. Maybe that's a good thing. What am I supposed to make of what we were sold with Victor Wembanyama mania and what the Spurs have become through the first half or so of the NBA season?
The Spurs are very, very bad. We've talked about this a lot. I think Wembanyama has still put up some incredible performances. And a lot of times if they do have a chance of winning, which they haven't actually won, but when they have a chance, it's because he plays really well and has, does his crazy blocks. I feel like every time I open TikTok, there are Victor Wembanyama highlights. And I'm like, you do know that they just lost their 17th game, right? Like, he's still doing crazy things, but that doesn't matter so much if he's not helping his team win. And we talk about an oddball, but the only reason that I don't think people are talking more about this is because the Pistons just lost their 20th game in the row, which tied a single season record for games lost in the entire NBA. I mean, this is the most games lost in a single season that the Pistons have ever managed to string together. But I really think that they are carrying they're taking a lot of the spotlight off of the Spurs because Victor still does have these highlight reels, but it's like, well, how much does that matter? I mean, I don't know if you, right?
Let's not let the truth of a win or loss get in the way of a good highlight, right? So in the NBA, where is the line of you're a top pick, so the expectation is high, but where do you bring your team? I mean, you look at right at the team he's on. With Pop, I mean, they brought David Robinson, Tim Duncan. They have, fingers full of rings. They had the payoff of it. So the expectation is the payoff, or it's like Wembanyama's never going to win in San Antonio 2 years from now. Where is he going to go? Where is he going to go win a title? He's going to have to move around, to win a title. In the NFL, you're a bust. If you're a high-pick quarterback and you don't lead your team to the promised land and play well doing it, you're a bust. In the NBA, you can play extremely well. Your team doesn't make it. And all of a sudden, Charlotte, the talk is, okay, what team next is he going to go to? He's averaging like 19 and 11, but the team stinks.
I think everybody knew that the Spurs were going to be bad. And I think the Spurs themselves leaned into that. So I think that the expectation they set might buy them some time. I don't know, though. It's a different era from what we've seen before with the Spurs. And I think at a certain point, they're going to have to turn out of the skid because the longer this goes, the more those questions will come up.
I do wonder if it's healthy long-term to not have all the eyes on you that we expected, because when Big Vic first came over here, it was, all right, you're immediately expected to be one of the biggest names that this league has to offer. And so far, we've kind of allowed him to go on the back burner in a way that normally doesn't happen for number one picks. Part of that could be football season. We'll see what happens once we get to the Christmas Day games, to all that stuff there. You could certainly argue part of it's healthy, but I also look at it and go, all right, you know what? Good for the NBA then, even more, going back to the in-season tournament. tournament, the fact that that was so successful and the fact that we've seen Tyrese Halliburton and all these other good things come from it in a way that's completely made me forget it, or at least made me less anxious about the fact that, all right, we're not getting immediate dividends paid in return for Victor Wembanyama coming over here as the most heralded prospect since LeBron James and immediately becoming this day in, day out news cycle feeding monster that I think we all expected him to be right off the bat. All right, time to finish off the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off onto your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, all that good stuff. And check out Oddball with Charlotte Wilder and Amin El Hassan, our guest Charlotte Wilder, who joined us here on a Tuesday, not a Wednesday. So again, you're not late for anything. You haven't missed out on it. You didn't miss your appointment on Tuesday. We're all good here. We just had to change some schedule stuff around
everybody.
here. But that means we get Charlotte here. But that means we get Charlotte here for this, that, and the third for our 3 quick stories to send everybody off into the day. And let's, guys, start off with this, as we've got some bowl opt-out news from the world of college football. One, very impactful for the upcoming NFL draft in a lot of ways, as North Carolina star quarterback Drake May, who's one of the guys that's going to be in the conversation with Caleb Williams for the number 1 overall pick, announced that he's foregoing the rest of his eligibility to head off to the NFL draft. Dad, certainly no surprise here. He's been one of the most talked about quarterbacks. Actually, you know what? I shouldn't say that. He's been one of the most talented quarterbacks and under talked about because he plays for a North Carolina team that has not accomplished requisite to the level of that quarterback for the last couple years, even though he played Heisman-level football last year and nobody seemed to care because he was out there in North Carolina. So that is the kind of talented quarterback people are really going to meet in earnest for the first time during draft season.
Yeah, I mean, nobody was talking about this guy, and yet, you know, here he's going to be probably the second player picked in the draft behind Caleb Williams. But this is where we are now. We're getting players opting out, and this is when some of the old school people kind of get disgusted that they're not going and playing for their team in their final game. And don't count me as, my birthday today, 61 years old, don't count me as one of those old school guys. And now I'm old school in some ways, but I have no problem with these players sitting with what they have riding on it to go into. And we keep using the word meaningless, and people aren't. It's not meaningless. There's meaning in certain aspects. Whatever. However you want to deem the bowl game that's not a team in the Final Four, that's fine. But guys that are saying, I need to preserve what I have right now and start working for the next level, cool by me. And I guarantee all their teammates understand that as well.
Hey, happy birthday, senior.
Thank you.
Look at
Appreciate that very much.
I feel like Drake May is one of those guys where casual fans only talk about him as like, well, they could tank for Caleb Williams or Drake May. And it's like, do you know where he plays? Do you know what he looks like? I don't know. You just heard that on, something like this. So I think you're right. I think it'll be really fun for everybody to get to know him. I also completely understand opting out of a bowl game because why, like, if you have a chance, I think it's different things mean different things for different people, right? And like, if you're not going to go play professionally and you're a senior or you're at the end of your career, a bowl game could be really fun, a great way to have a send-off. If you're banking on the fact that you really want a team to take you, you're probably not going to jeopardize that. So I think the meaning sort of depends on who's talking about what means what, but I get it.
I think that's a great point, actually, Charlotte, as a segue into another opt-out we saw, one near and dear to us at Notre Dame. Sam Hartman, the Notre Dame quarterback, penned a goodbye letter to college football yesterday and combined that with Notre Dame announcement, a very funny internet meme announcement about their backup quarterback, Steve Angeli, starting the bowl game. It sounds like Sam is opting out of the bowl game, and he's not a guy that's expected to be a first-round quarterback necessarily, but he's an incredibly accomplished college player, one of the best college quarterbacks statistically that we've seen come out in quite some time. And Charlotte, to your point, some players like me at the end of my career, I hadn't played and started a ton of football games, and so starting a bowl game would have been huge for me on the back end no matter what it was. It's another opportunity to get tape out there. 50 plus starts into his college career, Dad.
Yeah.
Nobody scouting Sam Hartman is going to learn anything about him in the Sun Bowl. What it instead presents is an opportunity to get injured for a guy who's going to go out here and try and do what we've seen the Aiden O'Connells of the world, other accomplished college quarterbacks who might not have NFL measurables, saying my best shot is to make sure I roll into camp healthy. You've got a ton of tape on me right now, and so I can't trip over the finish line. I completely understand it for Sam. Obviously wish him well. He came in and embraced our university in very short order, was an exemplary leader, was a really fun college player to watch and show. Wish him all the best in the next leg. He's got fans for life over here. I can say that much about Sam Hartman. Guys, let's get to that, though. On the other side of the feel-goods in here, we had an interesting directive from 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan in head of this rivalry game against the Seattle Seahawks, where apparently, Dad, we saw DK Metcalf get into some fisticuffs there with Fred Warner, the star linebacker of the San Francisco 49ers. And according to the San Francisco Chronicle, apparently going into this game, Kyle Shanahan, their head coach, had basically said he would give an extra Christmas present for whoever was able to get under the skin of DK Metcalf here. Does this bring you back to a little bit of the Bounty Gate stuff from your days as a player, Dad? Make you feel all warm and fuzzy and nostalgic?
Yeah, I love the fact that he just words it differently, right? We just threw up hard, cold cash to knock somebody out of a game. We were pretty straightforward with it, and you get the money. As long as you did it legally. There was honor amongst thieves. It couldn't have been a play where you got a flag. If you did it legally, you got the money. So he just worded it differently. I'll give you a present, money, if you get DK Metcalf out of the game. Yeah, get him mad and kicked out or hurt him. Okay? What's the difference? It's just a wording difference, right?
Yeah.
I just like the... Sorry,
no, go ahead, Charlotte. No, you go, Charlotte.
No, please, Jess, you hang up first.
I'm begging you.
I just like the idea of like get under his skin, because to me that could be like tickle him, like there was no... It's like how you got to be creative.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, apparently at a team meeting on Saturday, he was, like, showing clips of DK Metcalf, like, getting upset in previous games. And he was like, this is what we're going to do to this guy.
We had a player in Ron Heller who I played against. He was at Penn State when I was at Notre Dame. Then we played together in Philly and played together in Miami. He was that guy. He knew what guy in the other team had a temper, and he would hit him late, hit him on the echo of the whistle, shove him in the back, do something, and then he would just Ron Heller would put his hands at his side and let the dude pop him in the face mask or something and get a flag. And then he would just laugh at the guy pointing the flag and walk back to the huddle. It was hilarious. He got so many guys baited into that. It was great.
Now, it should be noted that the author, I think it was Michael Silver, walked this back a bit and said he believes that Kyle Shanahan wasn't being literal in his offer here, because this is the kind of thing that you have to do, like saying allegedly before something, so that you're not actually talking about offering a bounty. But let's get to someone that went fully across the line and get to the third here. The Turkish Football Federation has suspended all leagues on a night of shame for the nation's football after one of the team presidents punched a referee in the face at the end of their Super League home match against a team that's name I can't pronounce here. You had the president of a club, Charlotte, come down and punch an official in the face. And a weekend where we're arguing and beefing about the end of the Chiefs game here, this is a reminder that there's levels to this right now. And Patrick Mahomes berating an official, lesser than sign, lesser than sign, lesser than sign, president of a team actually assaulting a referee.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, makes the Chiefs look real soft, doesn't it? Like, let's see one of the Hunt family. Let's see a member of the Hunt family come down and really show them what it's about. I would pay good money for that. I am not condoning violence, but I mean, it would be a great visual.
Could you imagine? That would be akin, again, to the NFL, a GM, at the end of a game, getting mad, talking to an official and punching him in the face. I mean, I couldn't even fathom that happening yet. Here you go. We know soccer, how huge and monstrous it is. Obviously the most popular sport around the world. But that's what it would be a comparative to an NFL GM popping a ref after a game.
I mean, the Turkish president commented on it. Like, he took to Twitter to voice his concern for the situation. So it's bad.
I mean, we always talk about when things happen in the middle of a game and there's a big hit or there's a play, especially after a whistle, like a dirty play, where people start to go, that's assault, we should call the police. And we all never really know fully what to do with that because it's sports and it's basically a bunch of legalized assault, especially in these sports. Anyway, this one, a Turkish court is actually saying this guy needs to be arrested. And we're all kind of like, yeah, he probably does need to be arrested because that is definitely assault. So
pretty metal.
Make sure as you go off into the rest of your day. Maybe a little bit too metal here. If you believe this podcast and Oddball with Charlotte Wilder and Amin Elhassan are just the right amount of metal, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review them. Leave them a 5-star rating. Enjoy yourselves. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.